We're grateful to you. Thank you for staying with us. We're still on our big stories, and the second one we're taking a look at is the tension, the simmering tension between the Speaker of Parliament, the Right Honourable Alban Bagbin, and his first deputy, Joe Osei-Wusu, who doubles as Member of Parliament for Bekwai. Now, why exactly have we got to the point where we have to talk about them? You will notice that the Speaker of Parliament has been, ill a few times. He's been under the weather, had to travel. And on some of those occasions, the first deputy speaker has been in the seat, in charge, so to speak. And on some of those occasions as well, the first deputy speaker has set aside those things, those motions, those decisions of the Right Honourable Speaker. That is why this has become a matter of focus, because in one of them, in terms of COVID-19 expenditure, with the minority has been pushing for and put forward a private member's bill, the Speaker ruled, he decided on that matter, only for him when, in a subsequent session of Parliament, the first Deputy Speaker was in the chair to determine otherwise. That is what resulted in the Speaker in what you're about to see next, where he actually had some choice words for the first Deputy Speaker. Watch this.
Another issue that requires addressing is the decision of the first Deputy Speaker to upend my admission of the motion and rule that the motion should not have been admitted in the first place. Honourable members, it is interesting to note that this is the second time the first Deputy Speaker has taken the chair and has made a ruling which, in fact, was to overrule a position I had earlier on established before the House. In fact, the first Deputy Speaker was in my office. And what I'm telling you today, I told him before he left to the airport. The first Deputy Speaker has contended, and rightfully so, on several occasions, that he is not the Speaker. I have also, on several occasions, alluded to various areas of parliamentary practice, where when the Speaker is in the chair, makes a ruling, another presiding officer may not overturn that ruling. The penchant of the first Deputy Speaker to overrule my rulings is, to say the least, unconstitutional, illegal, and offensive. Be that as it may, I shall not be taking any steps to overrule the decision of the first Deputy Speaker to dismiss the motion as moved by the Honourable Ranking Member of the Finance Committee. The Deputy Speakers and I will deliberate on how to present a more coherent and uniform structure in respect of rulings so that the House is guided at all times during deliberations.
And so that was the thinking of the Right Honourable Bagbin. But that has given cause to the first Deputy Speaker to also respond, and he says he's been treated unfairly. You notice the language there from Bagbin, unconstitutional and all of that. Well, on Newsfile this past Saturday, Joe Osei-Wusu had this response.
The charge or the allegation that I have done something unconstitutional, I've done something offensive, is most unfair to me. I've given a narration of the matters leading to the ruling. Indeed, I have stated clearly that the motion which I ruled had been admitted by Mr. Speaker himself. There's now disagreement, should I say, or discrepancy as to whether he said I should admit the motion or I should permit the deputy leader to move the motion before secondment or after it has been seconded. I thought I heard that he said after it has been seconded. And if you watch the proceedings, I stated clearly that I'm going by what I heard Mr. Speaker say. So whilst I thought I was going by what he says he said the opposite. Be that as it may, once the motion had been admitted, it ought to be moved. And once it was moved, it had to be ruled upon. The fact that the Speaker may have ruled differently, does it make mine offensive? It only shows that we look at the same thing from different perspectives. And that is my challenge.
Yeah, his view is that what you did was not only illegal, unconstitutional, and offensive, but tantamount to insubordination. Now, you say...
Well, the insubordination was in respect of the ruling about the budget, the purported rejection of the budget.
That's right. Now you say that on that occasion, you characteristically elected not to comment on the Speaker's statement in public in order not to create the impression that there is tension between him and his deputy.
Yeah.
But is there no tension between the two of you?
Frankly, in my view, there's no tension. We disagree on the way we interpret things. Indeed, I've taken my time to explain. When he was chairman of the Constitutional and Legal Committee, I was a ranking member. On a number of occasions, we disagreed strongly. I recall when we were discussing the property rights of spouses, we took two very strong differing views. Because we couldn't reconcile, he actually said that we should refer the bill back to the executive because the leadership can reconcile. I'll recall exactly. That is not the only time we have disagreed. So disagreeing with him is not new. But to say that disagreeing with him now, because probably he's not the Speaker, is insubordination, is most unfair. And in my view, the height of intolerance of other views.
So what do you make of it? Insubordination or not? Unconstitutional or not? The Speaker says it is, and he says he told the first Deputy Speaker exactly that when he had a confab with him one-on-one in his office. And he said same, on the floor of Parliament. The first Deputy Speaker disagrees. But let's find out from someone who has watched Parliament for a long time, who knows the workings of Parliament, knows the standing orders, and what he thinks about this development. Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, Dr. Rasheed Draman, joins us on this beat. Dr. Draman, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
All right, pleasure having you. Your initial thoughts on this bit, and Joe Wise, Joe Osei-Owusu, has actually made mention of the fact that he doesn't have the privilege of, using Article 53(1)(e), the standing orders of Parliament, to his advantage, like the Speaker can. And so this was the only resort he had left. We'll address how relevant it was for him to come out and do this, but let's talk about the whole pot of issues. Private Members Bill, Speaker gives his ruling on it. There's a vote, and it is seconded. He gives his decision on it. On another encounter following that, you have the first Deputy Speaker, who is not a Speaker or the Speaker, at least per what the Speaker of Parliament has referred him to, and who has overturned that. What is your initial reaction to that development? Should that have happened?
I don't want to go into, there's certainly politics playing out here, because let's just step back for a minute and ask the question. Assuming we didn't have a split parliament the way we do have it now, assuming we didn't have a speaker who was from a different party than the first deputy speaker, would we be seeing this public display of, differences between the number one person and the number two person in Parliament?
Right.
I don't think so. I think if it was the seventh Parliament where the Right Honourable Michael Kwe was Speaker same Right Honorable Joseph Osei, who was Deputy Speaker, I'm sure they had their own share of disagreement. I mean, I don't think that everything that the Right Honorable Speaker did then, was fully or 100% supported by the first Deputy Speaker. But I believe they found a way of dealing with their differences, in a democratic way and in a way that doesn't give any impression that the office of the Right Honorable Speaker, which is himself and his two deputies, an impression that office is under any stress or that they couldn't work together. So in every human institution, I mean, let's be real, let's be frank with ourselves. I mean, conflicts occur. But I think for me, the way those conflicts are dealt with, I think is what gives them a clear sign that in a democracy, I think we have a way of dealing with our differences. I mean, without those differences coming out into the full public glare, where people who are watching will say, it looks like there are no rules and there are no mechanisms for dealing with these differences. So that is the point from which I am coming, and I think whatever is happening, I don't want to say who is right there and who is wrong, because it's subject to all kinds of interpretation. The most important thing is that I think the Right Honorable Speaker and his deputies must find a way to talk and to continue to talk. Because, this is the second time this has happened.
Right.
And I think on all occasions, the Right Honorable Speaker has said, I mean, I'm not going to overturn what my deputy has done.
Right.
So can you imagine if we have this, ping pong, this one turns it, this one turns it upside down, this one turns it, this one turns it upside down. We would have been having now, a situation in Parliament that would have been worse than what we currently do have.
So are you conceding that there is some power play, especially because they come from different parties with different traditions? There is some power play between the Speaker and the First Deputy Speaker. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, I mean, watching closely, I mean, without having all the details and looking at where each of them is coming from, cannot but, I mean, maybe arrive at that conclusion. That it might be an erroneous conclusion. But what I was saying, I mean, earlier was that I don't think that Honorable Joe Wise, our First Deputy Speaker, and Right Honorable Michael Quaid, Speaker in the Senate Parliament, didn't have disagreements. But we didn't see those disagreements play out in the public domain as we do see the disagreements between the two honorable gentlemen currently in the 8th Parliament.
Right.
So there could be, some issues of power play here.
Before we get into the technicalities and maybe moving forward what we can do you feel, on the back of all the things we've seen in Parliament, and I recall one of the last times we had an engagement on even Parliament in general and how they have conducted themselves as parliamentarians, the fighting here and the running away with ballots there and all of that, and your assessment of them, the score you gave them. And now we see it at the very leadership of Parliament with the Speaker and the First Deputy. Do you feel these actions in this context, focusing on the Speaker and his First Deputy, and even the Second Deputy, some of the things that have happened, do you feel all of this is putting Parliament, bringing some disrepute to Parliament? Do you feel these exchanges are bringing Parliament into disrepute?
I mean, certainly, because you see, like everybody is saying, our economy today is not doing as well as For instance, maybe a year or two ago, we saw all the rating agencies and their assessments. I mean, whether we agree or disagree, I think depends on so many factors. And you know, when all these things happen, it's not like an individual when they are rating your credit score. They look at, I mean, just simply how you pay your debt, I mean, or not.
Right.
In the case of a country, particularly in the case of our country, I believe all the things that are happening in Parliament have significantly contributed to that perception that, look, you know, there is some confusion, there is some disagreement. It looks like the leaders are not able to see eye to eye and so on and so forth. And that certainly affects the image of Parliament, especially coming on the back of all the fights that we have seen and so on, and have contributed to, you know, what we do have now as an assessment of our country in general, and as an assessment of the economic performance of our country. So certainly, without a doubt, I mean, all these things happening have an impact, and a negative one, of course. I mean, on the image of the institution. You know, if you sit back and look at maybe the data that is out there, I mean, Afrobarometer put out some data, I think in 2019, looking at the trust in our public institutions and so on, and levels of corruption. I mean, Parliament is only, I mean, behind the police and the judges and magistrates. So Parliament is number 3 in terms of the perception of people of this country about its performance, about the conduct of the people in that house, and so on and so forth. So all these things happening, whether it's disagreement about the e-levy or whether it's a disagreement between the Right Honorable Speaker and his deputy or deputies and so on, all this adds to, the growing, disturbing, negative perception about Parliament. And the only way that I believe, there's only one way to come out of this. That's
right.
talking and finding ways as masters of their own rules to design mechanisms to dig out of the current hole that they find themselves.
Right. So to design mechanisms, just because you broached the subject of the economy as well. I just want to find out. Some have said that the Speaker is becoming overweening in terms of his utterances, and that he feels he is more than he is, so to speak, just because he's on the other side, so to speak, of the political aisle. And one thing comes to mind that has been referred to. In recent times, the Speaker, on that same day actually, spoke about the fact that government, maybe even in the next 3 months, will not be able to meet its obligations of paying public sector workers. That shocked many, and he said he had it on authority. I mean, he had heard from the grapevine, if you like, that was the case. Some feel there was nothing wrong with that he was actually acting in good faith. I listened to Dr. John Kumar say that he feels the Speaker was just, trying to let people know about the economic times. But some have felt it was a wrong move. How do you feel about that? And do you think the Speaker's utterances, even stretching it to when he tells members of Parliament to shut up and that they make him sick, do you think the Speaker's utterances also ought to be looked at, that he ought to be more measured? What do you think?
Yes, certainly. I think you're not the only one who has raised it. A lot of people have raised this concern, members of Parliament and so on. And I believe the Speaker is carefully listening. And I think I'm hoping that in the coming days and months we might see some change in perhaps maybe in utterances. But let me put it in perspective, if you allow me. This is the speaker who was in Parliament the very first day and has seen, I think about 7 different speakers and 7 different parliaments.
Right.
Over the course of our pop democratic experiment. And like he said that day, he has been to many parliaments around the world. So have I. I have also, through the work that we do at the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, I've been to, if you like, almost all the parliaments that exist on this continent and in other parts of the world. I've been in UK, in Europe, in Canada, in Australia, all over the place, China, India. And, when you look at some of the things that happen in our parliament,
right.
Certainly, we can do better. To be very honest with you,
I want you to hit the nail on the head. Generally, I know we can do better, but the speaker, in terms of his utterances, do you feel he himself can do better?
Yes, of course. As I said, a lot of people have raised very serious concerns about that, and I believe, he has listened. He has listened and listened very carefully. So I am sure that in the coming days and months, as I said, we might see some difference in the approach that the Right Honourable Speaker will take as he deals with the conduct of members in the House.
Okay. Let's now look at the fact that, there seems to be this back and forth, push and pushback between the Speaker and his first deputy. And the latest being that a statement was issued, a 5-page statement, quite a read, pretty long actually. And then on News File as well with my colleague Samsaladi Anyani, the first deputy speaker shared his thoughts there as well, feeling he had been treated unfairly. But was that response necessary? He says he doesn't have the opportunity or the privilege of exercising Article 53(1)(e) of the Standing Orders, which speaks about formal communications. And so he had to come into the fray with this statement and also speaking in the media. Was he not just pouring, fuel onto an already raging fire? How appropriate was this response?
Well, I don't want to judge the first deputy speaker, but what I can say is that certainly when there is conflict and there is disagreement, as our elders say, I think the best thing that everybody can do, all the protagonists can do, is to shut up and to be very measured. I think because the statement, counter statements, and so on, only exacerbate an already difficult situation. And let's be very, very honest. At the end of the day, no matter what statements are made, no matter what utterances are made, they have to find a way, because they would have to sit in that house together until we have another election where maybe the outcome that is produced is different. This
right.
is what we have, and we have to find a way to make it work. And those at the House, Speaker and his deputies, majority leader, minority leader, have a very, very important role to play.
Right.
They can either make or unmake this parliament, and by extension, they can make or unmake our country at this critical moment in our history. I think in its own right, like you said, he doesn't have some of the powers that the Right Honourable Speaker has. Because in the business statement, at the beginning of every session of a meeting, the Speaker has that's the power to issue formal communication.
Right.
Yes, he doesn't have. But I believe we can work out some other mechanisms, because these are some of the gaps and the shortcomings of our standing orders and our constitution.
Right.
You go to some countries, the speaker and his deputies are all members of parliament, and they vote and so on and so forth.
Right.
We have a different arrangement in this country. And with all these things that are happening, perhaps this is the time, as we do have it in our standing, the standing orders are not finalized yet. So this might be an opportunity to sit back and imagine all kinds of possible, scenarios, even worst case scenarios than what we do have now, and split parliament and so on. Imagine all kinds of scenarios and try and see how we can prepare our standing orders, we can prepare ourselves, to be ready for these kinds of scenarios if they do occur in the future.
If they do occur. I just want to wrap with you on the Adwoa Safo conversation, but just to clarify what you said, just give me a yes or no answer on this, Dr. Draman. So you're saying that in the first deputy's shoes, this was unnecessary and you wouldn't have come out with all of this, right? The statement and all of this. If in his shoes, you wouldn't do that.
Well, all I'm saying is that statements and counter-statements do not help the current situation that we find ourselves in.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, if they talk less, I think, and they do more behind the scenes, it will be better for all of us.
Okay, so just to wrap on the Adwoa Safo situation, we have time and again, there have been instances cited where members of parliament have been absent 15 times back to back. Some say 18 times. Some, I think, is it Lower West Akim MP in the 7th Parliament in 2019, going for, as has been suggested, about a year absent from Parliament. Now we have the Adwoa Safo situation. What do you make of all this, and what would you like to see? In just about a minute, Dr. Draman, what would you like to see done in that respect?
What I would like to see done is perhaps let's go back to our standing orders and let's make sure that these matters are taken very seriously, so that one day we don't find ourselves in a situation like we do now.
Right.
When somebody whose case, because of the political nature of it and because of the times that we live in, the case is brought to the full glare of the public and so on. And then we start hearing somebody did this in the past and nothing happened and so on. They have rules about how to deal with these things. And in many parliaments around the world, that is where they are different from our parliament. When these things happen, I think the processes and procedures and the rules kick in immediately, so that it sends a very clear signal that this cannot be tolerated in a house like this.
Should Adwoa Safo be removed? Should Adwoa Safo be removed?
Well, I think that if indeed she has absented herself, 15 times consecutively without, and I think that that's where the emphasis is, without the permission of the Right Honourable Speaker and without reasonable explanation. That's what the rule says. I'm not the one who is going to be saying this. The rule is clear. But whether Parliament will apply the rule now or, as it didn't do in the past, that is where the conundrum is.
Okay.
And I think, that is where they have to be careful and make sure that, the rules are applied in a way that is very, very fair.
Okay.
And at all times, whoever is found foul of the rules, no matter the person's standing, let the rules take its course, so that, in a situation like this, you don't have any difficulty. It's clear.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Draman. Always, interesting talking to you about these matters. Dr. Rasheed Draman, Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs, and he says they should, follow their own rules and apply them without fear or favor, but they shouldn't, apply it without fairness. We still continue with some major bits, and we're coming to you next with our classroom project. We're bringing you an update. You've joined us, held our hand to bring that project to life. We bring you details of that up next on The AM Show.